In the last few videos, we've been figuring out what the three different chord shapes are, the three different major chord shapes are in the open G tuning. I'm excited to get to this part because we can start exploring how to use these shapes to learn how to navigate around the fingerboard. And it has to do with understanding the tone orders, which we've talked about. This first shape is 5, 1, 3, 5. The second shape up here at the 5th fret is 1, 3, 5, 1. And the third shape we looked at is up here at the 7th fret, 7, 8, and 9th frets, and it is 3, 5, 1, 3. So that tells you where the 1, the 3, and the 5 tones are at various spots up the neck, just using that one chord, the G chord. We've also discussed how these shapes are movable up and down the neck. You know, wherever you form this bar chord, you're forming a major chord based on the tone that's on the 3rd string. Wherever you form this second shape, no matter where on the neck, you're forming a major chord based on whatever the tone is on the 4th and the 1st strings. And whenever you form this chord, you can move it anywhere on the neck, and it's based on whatever the tone is on the 2nd string. So that's just one thing to note. As we start looking at the notes that are in the scale up and down the neck, it's important to remember what the major scale is, that whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half interval series, that series of steps. A whole step being a 2-fret move, and a half step being a 1-fret move, right? And I think the easiest way to remember that, which ones are the half steps, is to just kind of exclude everything as a whole step except for between 3 and 4 and 7 and 1. So everything's a whole step except for 3 to 4, and then it's a whole step, whole step, whole step to 7, then it's a half step back to your 1 tone, which is, this is up here at the octave. So between 3 and 4 and 7 and 1, it's a half step. All the rest are whole steps. So if you remember the half steps, you can kind of work out which is what the rest of them are. Most of us are pretty comfortable at this point, if you're looking at this sort of thing, with where the major scale is, just kind of intuitively up in these first few frets, right? That being your 1 tone, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And then you can drop below the 1 by going 1, 7, 6, 5. Right? So the idea here is to use these chords to figure out where the rest of the notes are up the fingerboard and do it in a way that's sort of repeatable. It'll help you learn this, and it'll also give you a tool if you haven't explored it in a while to sort of remember where they are, to figure that back out again. And it's based entirely on understanding the chord. The most useful chord probably for this is the one here up at the 5th fret. And there's a reason for this. This shape, with its tone order as 1, 3, 5, 1, well, from that 1 to this 1 is a full octave. So the entire scale rests between the strings. And with that root being the 1, the lowest tone in the chord shape is the 1 tone. So it's a pretty useful one for examining the fingerboard. So I think the first thing we should do using this chord shape, and I want to make a point and actually call these shapes by their proper names going forward. We've talked about them as shapes 1, 2, and 3 so far. That's actually not the correct name for these. They have a proper name in music theory, and it has to do with the fact that we're rearranging the tone orders of these shapes as we go through them. It's 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3. And what these shapes are, you can refer to that as inversions. Since you're rearranging the tone orders, they're inversions of one another. So the three shapes are the root shape, the first inversion, and the second inversion. And it has to do with which one of the tones is the lowest in the chord. So for instance, 5, 1, 3, 5, that has that 5 tone as the lowest tone in the chord. 1, 3, 5, 1 has the 1 tone as the lowest tone in the chord, and it's known as the root shape. 3, 5, 1, 3 has the 3 tone as the lowest tone in the shape, and it's the first inversion. And then that 5, 1, 3, 5 is the second inversion. So root shape, first inversion, second inversion. The root shape is what we're going to deal with, we're going to use for this purpose. I think the first thing we'll do is go through the chords of the key, because each tone in the key has a chord associated with it. We already know the 1 chord is 1, 3, 5, 1. It's a G major chord, and it's the 1, 3, and 5 tones in the G major scale. No matter what major scale you're playing in, though, it's the 1 chord is the 1, 3, 5, and 1, or the 1, 3, and 5. The 2 chord, meaning the chord that's associated with the 2 tone, the second degree of the scale, is tones 2, 4, and 6. So we can take our major chord, we know between 1 and 2 it's a whole step, so if we slide it up a whole step, we have an A major chord, but an A major chord isn't in the key of G, right? It's got this C sharp in it that's not in the key of G. It's a C that's supposed to be in this key, right? So to keep it natural to the key of G, to use the notes that are available in the G scale, it can't use this note right here. And remember, we have our 3 tone, 1, 3, 5. That 3 tone is on the 4th fret of the 3rd string, and between 3 and 4 is a half step, right? So that's your 4 tone. So this tone has to be in this chord. So we have our 2 tone on the 7th fret of the 4th string. We have our 4 tone on the 3rd string, 5th fret, and then we have our 6 tone on the 5th fret of the 2nd string, and then we have another 2 tone on the 1st string at the 7th fret. Okay, and it's good to remember that and understand that, because that's what's forcing this to be a minor chord in the key of G. When you form this major chord and you move it up to the 2 chord, if we know that the 2 chord is a major chord or is a minor chord, then we know we have to flatten that 3rd that's in the chord down a half step, down 1 fret, to make it a minor 3rd. And that's how you modify the major chord into the minor chord. No matter what shape you're using, if you flatten the 3rd by a half step, you're making it a minor chord. So 1st chord is major, 2 chord is up a step from that and minor, 3 chord is up a whole step from that and it's minor as well, because, right, 3 chord is minor, the 4 chord is major and it's up a half step from the 3 chord, because 3 to 4 is a half step. So you go up a half step, 1 fret, and make it a major chord. Your 5 chord is up a whole step from the 4 chord, so you slide up 2 frets and it's still a major chord. Okay. Your 6 chord is up a whole step from your 5 chord, because 5 to 6 is a whole step, but it's minor. And we'll go through why this is in the scale, but the scale forces these chords to be either major or minor. So that's your 6 chord. okay? Now your 7 chord, you might remember me talking about it, is a diminished chord. And what that is not only is it minor, it's diminished. So not only is the 3rd flattened by moving it back a half step, the 5th is also flattened by moving it back a half step. And that's just dictated by the notes that are available in G, in this major scale, in G major in this case. So that's your 7 chord. And then you're back to your 1 chord. Between 7 and 1, it's a half step. So you go up a half, up 1 fret, and you make a major chord. You're back to your 1 chord, okay? So let's take a look at these tone numbers that are in these chords, okay? We have 1, 3, 5, 1. That's the root shape, G major. We form that A minor chord, that 2 minor chord, and it's 2, 4, 6, 2. You see what's happening? They just go up by 1 number in the scale. 1, 3, 5, and the 2 chord is 2, 4, 6. Likewise, the 3 chord will be 3, 5, 7. So 3, 5, 7, 3. Okay? Up a half step to your 4 chord, because 3 to 4 is a half step, and it's 4, 6, 1, 4. Okay? 5 chord is up a whole step from your 4 chord, and it's major, and it's 5, 7, 2, 5. Okay? Your 6 chord is up a whole step from your 5 chord, and it's minor, and it's 6, 1, 3, 6. Your 7 chord is up a whole step from your 6 chord, because from 6 to 7 it's a whole step, and it's the 7, 2, 4, 7. And then you go up a half step from that chord to your 1 chord, up an octave from where we started, and you're back to 1, 3, 5, 1. So I think that's a really good exercise, and probably a good place to stop here, is go through these chords, because we're going to start finding the scales around them, and there's going to be a pattern around each chord. But it's good to kind of practice understanding what tones are in these chords. Just call it out as you go through it, just like I did. 1, 3, 5, 1, 2, 4, 6, 2, 3, 5, 7, 3, 4, 6, 1, 4, 5, 7, 2, 5, 6, 1, 3, 6, 7, 2, 4, 7, 1, 3, 5, 1. Okay. So notice we covered all of the numbers as we went up the scale there, as we went through the chords, which means you're putting your fingers on all of the tones that are in the scale. Just by figuring out these chords and what the numbers are in them, you've identified what tones are where all over the fretboard. Now you'll want to complement that with figuring out the scale around it, so we're not sitting here playing chords all the time. There's a few different paths of exploration you can go on from here. How are the 3 shapes linked together around here, and how can you navigate that? You know, what are modes? And this really unlocks modes for you, as we'll get into later. Just work through these chords: 1, 3, 5, 1, 2, 4, 6, 2, and so on. Go up the neck. Just do that a few times. Spend 10 minutes on it each time you pick up the banjo. And I find that calling out the numbers really helps you cement this in your head. You know, you could even go farther and call out the note names if you want to, but the main point here is to understand how to navigate this open G tuning. And if you're playing another type of banjo that has a lower tuning, but it's still the same relative tuning, meaning 5, 1, 3, 5, then all of these same concepts are going to apply. It's the same pattern. all it is patterns. Okay? Probably more than enough, probably too long a video, but there's a lot to cover here, so I'm excited to get into it, and I hope you are too. Give that a try, and we'll talk to you next time. Play around with it. Have fun.